Good evening. There's a frightening new phenomenon in labour relations in British Columbia, where an employer says to their hundreds of workers, take a pay cut by such and such a date or your jobs are down the tube. That's one subject I'm going to cover on the programme tonight, and I'm also going to talk to Gloria Parker of the RNABC and Mr. Crewson of the BC Health Association on the apparent contradiction about the shortage of nurses in British Columbia. 900 on the UIC, 525 vacancies that can't be filled because of the shortage, perhaps, of certain types of nurses. But first to Jess Succamore, National Secretary-Treasurer of CAIMAW, the union which is certified for the Newmont Mining operation at Similkameen, where the blow came down last Friday. Now, first of all, Jess, tell me what the blow was.
Well, the company asked for a meeting. We're just preparing for negotiations there. The contract runs until next January 31st. We got in there amidst all sorts of rumors. Our senior officer, Roger Crowther, went up there to be with a committee meeting, and the company just produced this document, laid it on them, which called for 20% cut across the board, basically on wages and conditions. And that was bad enough. But there was a complete gutting of the union security in the proposal, and it was a take it or leave it until next Saturday. Take it or leave it, or they would immediately start to close the mine.
There are 330 people employed up at Similkameen in Princeton, and that's one of the principal payrolls of the town, about $25 million a year, right?
That's correct.
And you were told, take a pay cut of 20%, or we'll begin to suspend the operations very shortly indeed. Did they also ask you to sign on the reduced wages a lengthy new contract?
No, it was just an immediate cutback, a rollback. I've got the terms of it, you know, and it was through to June 1990. So the new agreement would be effective September 16th, 1986, right through to June 30th, 1990. And it says reduce the total hour labor cost by 20% or $4.07 per hour as follows. Then they listed from A to K how they would reduce the 407, where it would be coming off, and then they would revise the collective agreement as follows, and several other revisions, which would basically take away anyhow, regardless of what the wages were.
In other words, even with the wage cuts, there was no guarantee of future jobs for the people in the bargaining unit.
They wanted us to actually sign an agreement that would take away our right to protect their jobs within the terms of the collective agreement.
But in fact, last Friday night when you got this letter, it was Friday you got the letter.
I think it was Thursday afternoon when the meeting took place, and Friday we met with the members, and Saturday we met with the members, and their committee, you know, the bargaining committee met with them, and it was unanimously at both meetings, complete rejection of that.
There was no feeling that in this hard time of our economic troubles, that the men might have been prepared to take an average of $2.40 an hour cut according to the company and continue working even on a shorter term basis?
Well, let's put it this way. Our union's position on all cutbacks is where a company says that they've got economic hardship, we say let an auditor look at it, an independent auditor, not theirs. Let's have an auditor look at their books. We don't want to know the internal operation. And if they come back and say that's justified, then we come up with a realistic proposal based on what our auditor and the company's position is, and we will look at it at that time. But with that sort of concession, there must be some commitment by the company that they're going to stay in operation. Here, it was a simply take it or leave it with no commitment at all by the company to even keep people working there.
Now, have you come to any such agreements whereby you've looked at their books and other operations and said, okay, we will take a cut?
Yes.
I won't go into the details of that, but there's another factor here which is very important, and I'll put it to you very bluntly. This company, which is a New York company called Newmont Mining Corporation, Similkameen, when were they given the 20% cut in power rates by the Critical Industries Commissioner?
It was back in June, I believe, but I'm not sure whether that's been enacted or not. It's effective back a couple of months.
20% cut.
And that was when we were told, like, you know, that Art Phillips's words were that the union had made a concession. We had given up 15 cents an hour on the last agreement from what the old agreement was, and that qualified us under the critical industries, you know, the union making a concession there. And we were quite pleased then when Phillips come out with a new agreement, which was lauded by Tom Waterland and Hugh Curtis. All the powers that be in government lauded this action, and there was every indication that we would be in operation there, and there was a real feeling of optimism in the community, not just in our own members, but in the community.
What was the saving in power costs with the 20% cut authorized by Art Phillips?
I believe it's what, $4 million.
$4 million. And you thought that would have obviated a wage cut because they got that cost and reduced their operational costs?
Well, based on all the information that we had, we don't have all the internal costing of the company, but based on that, we were optimistic. I think that the nub of the problem that the company, I think, may have got their backs up, and it's not one created by the union, it's been one created by the haphazard way that these concessions to the companies have been handled.
Now be specific about that. You say 20% power cut for Similkameen up at Newmont at Similkameen. What other cuts have been given that might cause the Newmont people to think, hey, we're not being treated fairly?
Well, in Indaco, for example, I believe it's our understanding they give 50% a cut. At Bell Copper, it was, I believe, 50%. So there's been an haphazard way of applying that. And it just points out, Marjorie Nichols in the column in the Sun newspaper today points it out very, very clearly and paints a picture there that we believe may have a lot of credibility. It may be the true picture, we don't know. And that is that the company wants to save what the equivalent of what it would be for 50% cut,
power cut,
or 40%, whatever that is. But they want to save that extra $4 million. And that just happens to be, as she points out, coincidental to the package that they've asked the union to take it or leave it.
Might it be that if Art Phillips and the critical industries and the government agreed to a 50% cut in the power rate for Newmont, that they would keep going?
Well, we would hope that the company would sit down and discuss those things with us, and we would certainly support that position, because we can't say philosophically that we support these handouts to the corporations, but that's a fact of life in British Columbia and in Canada.
And you want to protect these 250, 300 union jobs up there?
That's our position first, last and foremost. And if it means that we've got to support the company there, we will gladly do so. Why shouldn't they get the same breaks as what Noranda's getting or what Placer Development's getting? Why shouldn't Newmont get it? And maybe that's put their nose out of joint, and that's what we're scared of.
Now, you may be scared of it, but are there any hopeful developments you can tell me about?
Well, the fact is that there's been a meeting called by Art Phillips, the Minister of Critical Industries, the Commissioner, whatever he is, there for 10 a.m. on Thursday, where he's called the union and the company representatives together, and we're going there, hopeful that he will be able to at least find out some more facts on the issue, throw some more light on it, and hopefully be able to convince the company, if it is a case of matter them being concerned about them not getting an equal fare of the government power rate handouts and things like that, hopefully you'll be able to fetch some sense and shed some light on that issue.
All right, just let me sum up a little bit here. You forgave a 15-cent an hour increase.
That's correct.
You knew the company was not having an easy time.
That's correct.
But last Thursday, you got the hammer blow which said, take a 20% wage cut or we'll close down the operation.
That's correct.
And without that, even with the 20% power cut, they also wanted your 20% pay cut.
That's correct. And this year's come several weeks after, a couple of months after the other.
And you're now saying that if they got the same deal that Indaco got from the same government in the same system...
That's where our information is.
That's correct. Of a 50% power cut, you want to know if Newmont Mines are going to say, okay, if we get a 50% cut, we'll keep the operation going.
If it's strictly an economic one and not a philosophical fight, if they want that much savings and they can get that from the reduced hydro rates that other mines are getting, well, they should be getting.
The jobs might be saved.
That's correct.
So, you're an old-time street fighter in politics. What would you like to say to the new Premier, Mr. Van der Zalm, right now? How could he save these 330 jobs?
Well, by fetching some sanity and equality to the way the government is treating companies and corporations and people in this country. They've got to treat everybody the same. He says he's a populist. That is treating all the people nicely and talking to them. And I say that what we don't want to see is our members and the workers up in Similkameen and their families and the community be used as political pawns, especially if there's an election in the offing. You know, that's a by the by. Our concern, first, last and foremost, is the very saving of the jobs of our very members up in Princeton now.
Jess Succamore of CAIMAW. More on this particular story and your calls, and I'll collect calls on any number from Princeton tonight if any of the miners want to get in after the break. I'm with Jess Succamore of CAIMAW Union discussing this problem of the arbitrary close down on the face of the Similkameen mines of Newmont Mining up at Princeton. Now, unless Art Phillips and the provincial government come right into the rescue, this operation will close down.
That appears that way. It seems like it's fait accompli, you might say.
Because the employers say these reductions, even this, will not make us profitable now, but are our best hope to continue operation for what could be another 45 months.
That's correct.
But you say that would be on a gutted contract.
Yes, and it would be on a contract that wouldn't give any of the workers the right to their jobs. It would be worse, far worse a situation than what the IWAs are on strike for.
But what about the situation in Princeton? Do most of these men have homes in Princeton, or are they miners from all over the province of BC?
No, it's a very stable workforce, so most of the people from that community have worked there, lived there for quite some time, and as I'm told that one of the workers stood up at one of the meetings we had on Saturday morning, I think it was, that he said, well, you know, he said, it's one thing to go on UIC or welfare and lose my house. It would be another thing to work at these rates and lose my house.
Mind you, the rates go down from what, 14 to 13 or 14 to 11 or whatever it is.
Yeah, and it's considerable amount, and just like everybody else, you know, you get used to a certain standard of living. The cost of living is going up, and people take commitments based on steady employment. And just a couple of months ago, when they signed this new agreement with critical industries, it was, you know, a feeling of optimism that there was going to be a carry-on of working.
What about under the contract? If they close down the mine now, as they threaten to do unless they get the cuts, and if they don't even ask for the 50%, who knows, severance pay?
I don't believe there's any severance pay provisions there. I don't think there's nothing mentioned in here in the agreement that they said. They simply said they're going to close up the operation.
Yeah, but under your contract, is all you're entitled the statutory payments of anybody laid off because of economic turndown?
No.
You've got more than that?
No. I think that the minimum provisions prevail, but I'm not certain on that question, Jake.
So there's no severance pay to look forward to. There's only unemployment insurance. You get your holiday pay. That's about it.
That's it.
Now, is the company, imagine me asking this question, under the Labour Code you have an agreement.
That's correct.
Here's the company when you still have an agreement in force saying take it or leave it.
Yeah.
Is that an offence under the Labour Code?
Well, it appears to us that it's a kind of a blatant offence. The way you could look at it, if you turn that around and you look at the situation, if we had gone to the employer when there was a collective agreement in force and said, you pay us more money or we're going to strike, that would be an unfair labour practice. And the same holds true for the reverse. And you know, that recently there's been a lot of foo-fro in the labour movement. The biggest problem is what they commonly referred to as the Packard decision, where the Labour Board held that it was okay for an employer to impose new wages and conditions at the expiry of a contract. Here we have an employer trying to do that when a contract's got another 4 or 5 months to run.
Just by the way, the IWA issue is basically contracting out.
Yeah.
Was that involved in the proposition put to you with the wage cuts?
Definitely, first, last and foremost, so the money situation is contracting out. They can contract out everybody's job here. It's far worse than the proposition the IWA is facing.
This seems to be a new trend altogether, does it not? The take it or leave it trend, I haven't seen much of this in British Columbia.
Well, we've never seen anything as brutal as this ourselves.
Never?
Never.
Go ahead from Princeton. Hello? Jeanette? Anybody there?
Hello?
Yes, speak up, please.
Yeah, I'm not from Princeton, I'm from Williams Lake.
Carry on, then.
Okay, the present agreement has been put to the union. I've seen part of it, and it looks to me that it's designed simply for the union to reject, so that Newmont can use their copper concentrate cells in their presently opened mines in the United States. Maybe Jess would like to comment on that, as well as the provisions on temporary employees.
Yeah, there are two questions. Dealing with the last one is the easiest one. They want the right to hire temporary employees to fill any job in their proposal. But the other one is it would be a far more devious way of going about it. I think Marjorie Nichols is making that point in the paper, that maybe the company is doing this simply to get that hydro money, you know, to get that amount of money.
The other point he was making out, Similkameen, Newmont might be closing this down to use to their better advantage the ore bodies they're working in the States. And
Well,
that's a normal economic decision.
Yeah, and those things we have no control over of anyhow, you know, but it could be correct. We don't know. That's the problem.
Thank you. Go ahead from Princeton this time.
Yes, Mr. Webster, I'd like to speak to Mr. Succamore, if I could, please.
Here he is. Go ahead.
Mr. Succamore, I'd like to compliment you on the way you're handling yourself on the Webster show. I'm not a union man, but I believe
Carry on.
in the province that we need more union people like you that seem to be level-headed and know how to address the issues and know what the problems are before riding out on your big white horse. I think that more unions should be looking towards your type of people.
What will the effect of this be on the town of Princeton and its environs, caller?
I would say it's going to have a drastic effect. With the IWA strike, and particularly this one closing down completely, I would say that the local people, all the workers, all the business people, everybody in the community and district are going to be greatly affected by this, Jack.
Thank you very much. Go ahead to Jess Succamore of CAIMAW.
Yes. Mr. Webster, I've listened to you for about 15 years. I've never phoned you. And I think the people in Princeton should be really concerned about this. I work for the BC government. I don't want to give my name. I've worked for over 20 years, and I know what they're going through. I got fired and rehired at less than $200 a month, and no union could help me out. And I certainly hope these people win.
Thank you very much for your call. Go ahead, please, to Jess Succamore.
Yeah, good evening, Jess.
Good evening.
Yeah, you and I have met before. We shan't give any identities here, but however, you made a comment on there's... it's one thing of losing your home on UIC or welfare, completely true. However, it is another thing to lose your home when you've been offered wages such as I have at $6.26 an hour with no benefits, with an improvement, of course, to $6.76 within 3 months.
What kind of a job have you got?
Well, I'm a welder. However, it seems so shoddy, and I'm almost ashamed to go out and work for those piddly wages after 20 years as a tradesman. I've even looked for work right completely out of my trade. And this is what you're up against. I've had offers of $4, $6, $6.26, $7 an hour, and definitely no benefits.
Well, I'm afraid the halcyon days seem to have gone from British Columbia for the moment, don't they, Jess?
They do, but you know what, this last caller, I mean, it's really gut-wrenching to listen to that sort of a plea, basically, from people. And what I think we've got to really do in our society is try to reevaluate what type of a society we're trying to build.
Right at the moment, we're dealing with a populist government, whether it's in Ottawa or whether it's here, who are flying by the seat of their pants and trying to encourage internal growth and trade and free trade. There's no chance of that kind of reorganization of society.
No, they're all looking for the quick, easy answers and not prepared to take a long-term view.
And
but I agree, here at Princeton, we've got to act quick, and the Birmingham government's got to get off its backside, and they've got an obligation to do something to save that community of
And
Princeton.
we want to know why Endako got 50 and Newmont only got
Yes.
50% cut and Newmont only got a 20% cut. Go ahead again from Princeton.
Hello,
Yep. That's you. Speak up.
Jack Webster.
Yes.
Jack,
You've got to turn down your television set.
this is the IWA in Princeton.
Well, even if
We're
you...
on strike. I like to talk.
Hold it! Would you turn down your television sound? The 7-second delay will drive you into instant psychosis. You must put the sound down. I see I've got to educate a whole new bunch of people at 5 p.m. Now carry ahead.
Jack, are you all right?
Yes, I'm fine.
Okay, this is we're the other industry in the town of Princeton, the IWA. I have lived here for 20 years. I see what's going on at the Similkameen mine. And these people who are my comrades here and work in this segment of the society, have some dignity to hold their heads high. And Jess has done a damn good job for them here as their representative. And I think that this has to be aired out. We know that they're in trouble at Similkameen mine. Everybody does. There is a lot of mismanagement and so on and so forth in it.
I don't know that, but you can say it. Carry on.
But, Jack, these people have to buy a dozen eggs at the same price that I have to buy, and they will not be eating eggs if they accept this contract. And I want to thank you, and I want to thank the CAIMAW people and we will support them in their issue.
Are you on strike at the moment?
Yes, been on strike for 7 weeks.
How many men on strike in you?
126.
near Princeton.
In the Weyerhaeuser plant, Princeton, BC.
Thanks a million.
Thank you, brother.
Take another call. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Webster.
Yes, sir.
Yes, could your guest tell me if there's any evidence that the Princeton operation is making money, but that it's investing its profits in other enterprises, and is therefore able to present an essentially deceptive picture as to the profit picture in Princeton? I'll hang up and listen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, I think that it's a fair question, but unfortunately I can't give the answer that the caller would like. All we know is that over the years since the mine has been in operation, they've turned a handsome profit. They've made tens of millions of dollars profit out of that operation. It may well be that right now the company is losing money on that operation. In the light of not having any evidence to the contrary, we can only say that possibly that's true. The question is, that are they going to try to keep that mine opening, just like other people are getting handouts from this government? If they can get them, why can't the Newmont mines get them?
I'll give you another one. Louisiana Pacific got $25 million US interest-free for 3 years for a waferboard plant, which we'll see about in the future sometime. But the fact remains is that they're losing money on the price of copper as it is right now.
That's
you know
what they
that
say.
As well as I do.
Well, that's what the common consensus is.
When's the meeting with Phillips?
On a Thursday at 10 a.m.
You and the management?
Well, our bargaining committee, I may or may not be present there. It's all according to what...
But both sides are going to be there?
Yes.
I could make you a little bet, almost. I think you'll get the 50-cent power cut.
Well, I sincerely hope so.
And then we'll see what the company does with that.
Yeah, and I'd ask people in the community, just and outside of Princeton and the whole of the province, just to look at what's happening in Princeton and get onto their MLAs, get onto their MPs, get onto anybody and try to say this sort of thing shouldn't be allowed to happen in BC.
My thanks to Jess Succamore, National Secretary-Treasurer of CAIMAW. Next, we're going to deal with the crisis in shortage of nurses, and I'll introduce my guests after the break. Fortunately, I feel in great health these days and I'm not in need of any nursing. But as I read the public prints and hear what's going on, I wonder about the nurses shortage. 900 odd on unemployment insurance, 525 vacancies, which apparently can't be filled. So I've asked two people to come here tonight. One is Gloria Parker, president of the RNABC, and the other is Herman Crewson, chief executive officer of the BC Health Association. Now, I know what nurses are, but the BC Health Association is for the management of all the hospitals?
Represents the boards of management and the administrative staff of the hospitals. That's true.
Ladies and gentlemen, do we have a nursing shortage or don't we have a nursing shortage? Or are lots of nurses collecting UIC who could be working?
Jack, we have a nursing shortage, and we've had a nursing shortage for some time. We've also had people on that UIC roll for some time, and that's the answer we've been getting for a long time. And we have to do something about it. We have to look at what the future of our healthcare system is going to be down the road, and we've got to start planning now so that we can avoid the situation that we've been in this summer.
Now, you're not talking about a surplus of nurses drawing UIC.
No, I'm talking about the vacancies that we can't fill, and I think that the list that is listed as 900 nurses on UIC, we need to talk about that a bit and why those vacancies are there with the nurses on UIC.
Tell me why.
Okay. First, I'd like to say that our association has had some very difficult time getting any information about the details of that list from UIC. We know that it's not just registered nurses on it. There are several people that are categorized as nurse. Now, the vacancies are for registered nurses, and they're, for the most part, registered nurses with special training. And I'm afraid that the people on that list don't match up with the vacancies that are there.
Well, I'm sure we checked with UIC and were given the impression they were all registered nurses. How about you? Have they given you any specific breakdown?
Well, we haven't had a breakdown like that they're all registered nurses. We just know that...
No, I'm saying I just got the impression that they were all registered nurses. But I mean, there could be all kinds of people who say, I'm a nurse.
Yes.
I might be a home care nurse. I might be a mother's help. I might be
I think that there are certain categories of attendants and aides that have their own UIC categorization, but that particular number 900 does not mean to the public that they are registered nurses or eligible for registration.
No, but you don't believe there are 900 fully qualified registered nurses who can manage to draw UIC while there are 525 vacancies?
I certainly do not believe that.
Neither do I. I was hoping you might have the answer for me, and I don't have the answer either. How about you? What about the shortages?
Well, the shortages, as has been explained, Jack, are to a large extent in the areas that require some special preparation. Critical care nursing, for example, has a 20% vacancy rate, as opposed to general nursing, where the vacancy rate is more like about 3%.
Right.
So unless those nurses that are on that unemployment roll have had the preparation and experience to meet critical care,
They don't
we've
qualify.
got a problem, and they don't qualify.
Now, is it only critical care nursing? Can I say of the 525 vacancies which I'm told are extant at the moment, do you agree with 525?
That's about right.
525?
Yes. That was our latest figure. We haven't got our, the figures we're working on right now aren't published yet, so our latest figure is 525.
Now, would 20%, no, would 90% of them be for critical care nursing of some kind or another?
Not quite, Jack. Of the 525, which represents 3% of the nursing workforce
Right.
as a vacancy rate,
Right.
we're talking something in the order of about 60 that fall into the critical care area. It's obvious, too, that when we talk about the vacancy levels, that we have to view the geographic situation, because in northern BC, it was ever thus. In other words, there has never been a condition in which everything has been rosy in the fact that there have been nurses there to be employed. And so you have to differentiate. When you come to the lower mainland, there's no question that the real pressure point is in the critical care nursing area. And in the lower mainland, it would seem as though the shortage in general nursing is a cyclical thing, because every summer we run into a similar position, though it's worse this year than it has been in the past. It'll be interesting to see what happens in a couple of months from now.
You mean summer holidays?
That's right.
Now, how about that?
Well, I'd like to respond to you, Jack, by saying that a nurse is not a nurse is not a nurse. And you have to look at the profession right across the board and where nurses find themselves working to understand the kinds of special skills they need in each area. And we go all the way from that nurse who specializes in looking after the elderly, the geriatric nurse, to a nurse who's looking after the psychiatrically ill, to a nurse that's in an ICU where the patients are totally reliant on the technology, to a nurse that's in a surgical unit of a special part of the anatomy. And each one of those positions requires a nurse with special skills. I'm a practicing nurse, and I can't move freely from one place to another.
No, you've put that very well indeed, but there is a fault in the system somewhere. Is it money? Is it training?
I think it's a little bit of everything. We have never supplied enough nurses to meet our needs in British Columbia, and we have relied very heavily on import from other parts of the country, in particular the other parts of Canada. In 1980, we had almost 1,200 nurses registering from other parts of Canada. This year, we had 450.
That's because they know things are bad economically
They're bad
in BC and they stay away.
We've fallen behind, 7th behind the rest of the country in our wages.
Just a minute. We're 7th in the wage level.
We were first, and we're way down now.
So you're not attractive to nurses from Ontario, for
No,
instance.
we're not, and we're not attractive. Our economy is not attractive to their husbands either.
That's right, because they've got to find a job too. The wage rate is remarkably low. A general duty nurse to begin with only makes $12.85 an hour.
That's right. And next door in Alberta, they make $14.85. So why come to BC?
Yeah, especially if you need the money. Now, is the government being stingy about financing nursing training, or are quotas for nurses within your budgets?
Well, I think in terms of the training part, Jack, and I certainly support Gloria on this, that in the training part, there has never been an effort to, in effect, train the number of people who want to be trained in BC as BCers.
But I thought we'd
And
always
that's,
done that with the union BCIT courses for nurses where they could be done in 2 years and all that kind of thing.
There is a limit in terms of the enrollment in those institutions, and that enrollment is based upon the level of funding they have for faculty, staff, space, etc. We have never in BC, in effect, produced the numbers that are employable in the nursing area for the health field.
Should we be producing them in BC?
Oh, absolutely. We should be increasing the seats in our basic programs. We should also be looking at courses that nurses can take to become skilled in those specialty areas. And we, in addition to that, need to be able to release those nurses to get to those courses, because the nurses coming out of the nursing school today, and we have a new crop coming on, as soon as they get their registration results, they'll be RNs, but they can't go into those vacancies that are so hard to fill. And neither can people that are on that UIC that haven't been working, because technology is creating a situation where unless you're current, your life and my patient's life may be in danger if you don't have a competent nurse.
It's a fascinating topic. I'm going to continue with this, and I'm going to encourage telephone calls too. Now remember, all you new phoners to Webster, you got to turn down your television set once you're on the air or you'll drive us all crazy. But I have more questions to ask too, and I'll take your calls as well after the break. Of RNABC and Herman Crewson, the BC Health Association. You wanted to raise a couple of points about stress on nurses.
Yes, I do, Jack, because I think that's very much a part of why we don't keep nurses in the workforce. If we could keep every nurse that we trained in the workforce, we may not be facing the problem we have. Why don't we keep them in?
Well, not enough money.
That's part of it, but part of it is the stress when we go to work in the morning or in the afternoon or at night, and the horrendous responsibility we have to take to assure that our patients get good care. And technology has made a big difference to the practice of nursing. And you know, we're not just technicians. Nursing is a lot more than making sure that IV doesn't run dry. Nursing is getting to that patient and helping them live with their disabilities. It's getting to that patient and stopping them from getting into hospital again. And we don't have time to do that. And we know that that's what we should be doing.
Well, what's the answer? More nurses with more money and more training.
Yeah, I think that the places that we work, and we work in the community and in the institution, I think the system needs to have more funding.
How about you, Mr. Crewson, on this funding caper? Because I knew it will all come down to funding in the end.
Well, indeed it does, Jack. And we have a great deal of sympathy for the situation with nursing and the environment, the work environment in which they are placed. There's no question that generally hospitals who have in effect experienced a situation of restraint over the past 2 or 3 years have had to put pressures on. And those pressures relate directly to funding. It's probably going to continue to be that way. So I suppose on the other side of the coin is the fact that we're not alone. In effect, the whole of the economy.
Have we ever tackled this problem, though? I mean, I've been reading about this for months now, but I've determined to do it when I came back, that we have not training critical care nurses or other specialized technological duties for nurses. Have we just ignored this?
Well, I think that
has he ignored it?
I think management's doing the best they can with the funds they've got to do it with, and it is cut fine. We have to look at the healthcare system in total, though, and look at a better way in the future of doing it so we get more healthcare out of the dollars that are available. And certainly there is no doubt that there are people using acute care beds that would be better cared for and more properly cared for outside of that acute care.
That's a battle we've been fighting for how many hundreds of years in British Columbia.
True.
But we need capital funding to build the programs to look after those people and look after them to their optimum.
Not likely to get it even from a more generous Van der Zalm administration when he has a $900 million current deficit in his present budget.
Well, that's true, Jack. And I think that to follow up on what Gloria has said, the bottom line is that we've got to be innovative. We've got to figure out ways to work not harder, but a whole lot smarter in terms of stretching the dollar. And in that respect, I think that the nursing profession has been extremely supportive in terms of looking at innovative ways of doing this. Now, the question is, how do you deal with it? Well, there's a lot of actors, there's a lot of barriers that have to be dealt with in terms of doing those sort of things.
I don't know how you do it, because I'm a basic pragmatist. You've got a government that's hard up for money, despite Willie van der Zaan. They're hard up for money. Are they going to expand health funding to the extent where you can start new courses for fully trained nurses? The ones who come out now as general duty are not fully trained.
They're ready to work, but they're not able to go into specialty areas. I think that...
And if you take time off to be trained for a specialty area, do you pay the nurses' wages all that time?
Well, we have a major problem, Jack. Within the industry, you have to look at the demand that's there for in-service education, let alone continuing education. I mean, the whole area of resource that is allocated for that purpose throughout all of the professions and technologies, and there's some 30 of them in hospitals, is very, very slim indeed. And so by the time you kind of allocate that out, it's a rationing system that is just really too slim to be able to do the job that should be done.
So therefore, there's not going to be any improvement in the immediate future of this problem of 525 vacancies. But let's get a real breakdown somehow or other of what these nurses are in UIC, and you can get rid of that nuisance.
Well, you tell me who to talk to in UIC, and I'd be glad to give you the breakdown.
I think we talked to them, but we didn't push for the breakdown. Should have done, perhaps. Now, I'm going to take some phone calls. I don't know where they'll go, but we'll try something. I have Gloria Parker and Herman Crewson here on the nursing shortage. What do you have to say?
Well, Mr. Webster, I'm a critical care nurse, have been for 17 years, and I'm in the process of leaving the profession. It has nothing to do with money. What it has to do with is respect for the profession within the hospital situation. I was a manager of a critical care unit, and so was directly involved with budgeting for that unit. And when I see the inequities in the budget for nursing in hospitals and the way the money is spent within the hospitals, it was so disheartening to me to not be able to get my staff trained because there was lack of funding or no funding, and to see new technologies and new departments growing within the hospital, that I could do nothing to encourage my staff.
Give me a sample inequity. What you're saying to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that money was being spent in the wrong places.
From my point of view, now perhaps everyone is slightly territorial and protective of their own departments, but I would see departments growing, computerization of hospitals when we can't care for the people in the beds now. I find this, the critical care course, you were talking about the critical care course, they want nurses to take 3 months off without pay, to pay $500 to $600 for a course, and to get no remuneration for doing such.
That doesn't seem fair, does it, Mr. Crewson?
Well, I guess, Jack, one of the problems there is within that whole realm of the bargaining situation. And I have no jurisdiction or influence in that area.
Realize
However, the point is that the position thus far that has occurred has been a position of a nurse is a nurse is a nurse when it comes to pay and benefits. As far as the employer is concerned, I don't think employers would look unkindly to a recognition of not just a nurse is a nurse is a nurse, but those particular areas where supply and demand is such a very big factor, they would be prepared to talk about changes. However, that hasn't come forward.
Does a general duty nurse get the same as a critical care nurse? Surely not.
Yes, she does, Jack, and I'll tell you what we're doing about that as a profession. One of our problems has been, as a profession, in our development, we have not certified nursing specialties, and the Canadian Nurses Association has now taken it as a role for it to certify the specialties nationally so that a nurse that would hold a critical care certificate in British Columbia could use that right across Canada. That is happening, and it's happening rapidly, but it hasn't happened yet.
But when that happens, a nurse certified in critical care would go in at a special rate.
Well, once that happens, the union certainly would have something to use to bargain a standard that the person would meet.
The nurses have been slow on this.
Well, I think it's a developmental thing within our profession because technology is what's creating the specialties.
That would seem a logical thing, wouldn't it?
Yes, yes, indeed it would.
Certified specialties. Well, we've got lots of phone calls, and I'm going to take them. That was a very good call from the critical care nurse. Are you still there?
Yes, Jack, I am.
You're resigning because of stress.
Well, no. Well, lack of respect. I don't like the word stress and burnout. I mean, I've been doing it for years. I can still look after patients in critical care. I'm doing it on a casual basis now, and I love to do it. But nursing has not earned the respect that they should have in the healthcare field, I believe.
But I'm sure you have, and thank you for your call. Now I'll be back with my two guests after the break. Talking about the phenomenon whereby we have got 525 or thereabouts vacancies for nursing right now, and it seems that one, we're not training enough. We don't have a system to certify specialism for the very fancy and complicated nursing of today. Is there any hope that there'll be money for specialized training? That woman was telling us that you've got to take 3 months off, you've got to pay $500 or $600 and lose your pay to be upgraded as a nurse in your particular specialty.
Well, we have got a mandate, Jack, from our members to look into this, try to do something about it. I don't know what the something is. We've got to look at all of the options and all of the actors that we have to talk to in order to make it happen.
Always finishes up as money, doesn't it?
Exactly right.
Let's try this call. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack.
Yeah.
I was just wondering why, if there's such a shortage of nurses, Lionsgate Hospital, as of December 1st, are laying off 60 licensed practicals from the acute building and replacing them with RNs. How are they going to replace them?
I don't know about that. Do you know if that's a fact?
I can't respond. I can respond to part of it, but not to the fact part.
Yeah, we haven't heard anything about that, Jack. And I would guess that if they have a shortage of registered nurses, they won't be able to do as they intend to do, and that's as simple as that.
Well, some already have their pink slips for December 1st.
60 practicals, I'm going to hire RNs.
That's right.
Would that be?
Well, the only thing that I can respond to the caller is that in some of the areas of nursing, an RN can do a broader scope of assignment than an LPN can do. And I don't want to undersell the usefulness of the LPN in the system because they are very useful. I think we have to incorporate the use of LPNs in a variety of ways, and their program of education is going to have to keep up with the demand in the workplace to get your best value for your dollar out of the workers. And I don't want to in any way denigrate the value of LPNs in saying that.
But it's a bit of a problem. Hold on, ma'am, and somebody will talk to you about it. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack.
Yes.
Yes, I was wondering if you were aware of how difficult British Columbia is to become a registered nurse, even if you have your practicing license from another province. I am a critical care nurse with 7 years experience in Montreal, and I'm not being recognized in British Columbia.
Well,
I have good news for this caller, because if you have not approached the registrar recently, please do so. We have changed our policies, and any nurse that is currently registered in another province is eligible for registration in British Columbia.
Yes, but British Columbia doesn't accept the Canadian Federal Nursing exam. They only accept the TOEFL exam.
Oh, you're talking about the English language exam?
Yes.
Well, it's easy. You speak English. You wouldn't have any trouble passing it.
I realized this. I could have worked 3 months ago, but the RNABC is making me hold off to finish the oral exam of my TOEFL before I can get my license in British Columbia.
Well, perhaps you should call somebody at the RNABC tomorrow after this conversation on Webster Tonight with Gloria Parker.
Yes, but I've tried, but
Well, try again tomorrow.
I think you could get registered very easily, sir.
Try again tomorrow and tell them Gloria Parker sent you. He didn't hang up, did he? I thought that was quite a good way to handle that call. Because if he's a good critical care nurse, you need him.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, Jack, I just wanted to tell you a little bit. My wife is a registered nurse, and the situation as it is in the hospitals right now, she is a surgical nurse on a floor, and it's well known that the management of the hospital is not calling in relief staff if they can get away with it in a bid to save money. My wife has come home on several occasions after having a nursing load of 12 patients on herself, crying because she loves her profession so much and she's scared to death. But one night she's going to be so busy that there's been times where she hasn't been able to go in and check on a particular patient for 2 hours. She's been so busy, somebody could die and she wouldn't even know it. She's come home crying, worried that she'd have to carry that on her shoulders for the rest of her life. And as the first or second caller stated to you, she is now thinking of quitting, and that upsets her greatly because she loves her job, she loves her profession, and she just can't stand it anymore.
Is there, obviously you would agree that it's such
That
tension.
describes the situation exactly, and that's why we can't retain people in the profession, and it is scary. There is nothing worse than not being able to give the right kind of care to your patients. It's very frightening.
Mr. Crewson?
Jack, in relative terms to other provinces, there's no question that in BC, the numbers of nurses as a ratio to patients is low. We have no idea what is the right number, but certainly in relative terms it is lower. And I suppose that we have great sympathy. That is to say, the management of facilities has great sympathy with the plight that is there, but that again is money.
In other words,
as soon as we begin to pull in relief for people who are on vacation, sick, or what have you, that's money.
Well, then why do
Go on, carry on.
there's probably been 4 times in the last month where she has gotten a call at 11 o'clock at night to show up for a night shift, which starts at 11:30, and they're willing to pay her double time to come in and do this on a half an hour's notice without any sleep, and expect her to work a full shift.
Can I respond to
Yes,
that
please.
as a nurse that has to call in nurses? That when I have to ask a person to do a double shift, it's because I can't get people to do it. And that's because we haven't got enough nurses there to do it, the job. It's a manpower shortage. And it is a very stressful thing to ask a person to work a double shift.
Jack, I think that where the stress point of this nursing shortage is really falling, as we have determined it, is in the, if you like, pool of nurses that hospitals have been able to rely upon for help when needed. That pool has dried up, or almost dried up, so that a head nurse who finds herself in a position of having to staff just hasn't got a pool to draw on. That the first, if you like, pressure point is with the pool that exists.
Well, that's a very tough situation indeed. Thank you very much for your call, sir. I'll take one more, I think, perhaps. Go ahead. No, I can't take one more. Hold on, please. I've learned quite a lot from you tonight. There are 525 vacancies. There is not enough training of the specialty nurses. You haven't finished your certified specialties yet. You are hamstrung by money on many occasions, and you're hoping that someone will loosen the purse strings and make it much easier all around for everyone.
And we're not turning enough nurses out at the basic level either.
My thanks to Gloria Parker, President of the RNABC in British Columbia, and Herman Crewson, Chief Executive Officer of the BC Health Association. I'll be back after the break. I think this 5 p.m. spot is going to work very well. I'm beginning to settle in. I've got to educate a number of people in turning down the television sound before they come on the air. But I enjoyed that program tonight. Now, tomorrow, what does she do now? Flora MacDonald, Conservative Cabinet Minister. And she is now the Minister of Culture, with Webster at 5 p.m. precisely.